Hi everybody. In this session we're going to talk about scales in different keys, their key signatures, and the circle of fifths. Let's talk about scales first. So far we've been talking about and only using the key of C, which has no flats or sharps in it. Now we're going to look at some other keys that actually do use the sharps and flats, or the black notes on the keyboard. Keys that are most closely related are an interval of a perfect fifth or a perfect fourth away. So let's look at a perfect fifth away from the first note in the key of C, the C, and move up a fifth from that note to the G note. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that when we go up a perfect fifth, that gets us to the G note. Okay, so now if we construct a major scale starting on the G note, and remember we use the method that we used in Module 1 where we go whole step. Okay, so here's G, whole step, half step, another whole step, whole step, and watch this. By doing a whole step between the sixth scale degree of the key of G up to the seventh, we encounter a black key for the first time. Okay, so this black key is the only black key in the key of G. This is an F sharp. Okay, so let's count up again. G, A, B, C, D, E, and instead of the F, we actually go to F sharp, because remember this is a whole step in between these two notes. So there is your F sharp, and then finally your octave. Okay, so let's play it one more time, starting on G. Remember, this is a G scale in the key of G, and we'll get into more about keys in a minute. But let's count that up using our whole step, half step method one more time. Okay, so a whole step, another whole step, then a half step, now a whole step. Remember, a whole step is 2 half steps. Now another whole step, another whole step. So instead of going here, that would just be a half step. We have to go half step to create a whole step. Whole step, and then a final octave. Now, as I said a couple of paragraphs ago, remember that you can use either a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth to find your closely related key. So now if you construct a new scale, a perfect fourth away from the C note, you will move up from the C to the F note. Let's try that. So remember, we're going to go up a perfect fourth from C. So here's our C, and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's up a perfect fourth in the key of C. That brings us up to the F. Okay, so now let's construct, like we did in G, how we constructed a scale starting on F, on G. Let's start one on F. Okay, so let's do that same method. It works. It just works every time. So here we go. Whole step. Now watch this. Half step. We end up with a black key right here in this scale of F. Okay, let's keep going. Now we go another whole step. Remember, that's 2 half steps. Another whole step, and then finally a half step. Okay, so let's do that a little smoother. Okay, let's see. Here we go. We're creating an F scale. Remember how it has the same sound characteristic as, okay, if you studied do, re, mi, fa, sol, in school, it starts exactly the same. Do, re, mi, same method. Okay, so here we go. Whole step, half steps. Starting here on the F, we go whole step, half step, whole step, half step. All right. So we have just played two brand new scales. Going back, we found one and going up a perfect fifth to G. And we created a G scale. So here we go with that one more time just to remember. And here's that one black note, that one F sharp in there. Okay, now let's look at the F. Let's start one on the F. We'll still create another major scale in F with an F scale. Okay, one more time. There's that half step and another half step. All right. Okay, so moving on, these keys, these notes that we've encountered already, these black keys, have a name. And another name for these sharps or flats is the name accidentals. It's ACC. It's like accident, like you had an accident. And it's spelled ACCIDENTALS. So this term represents small changes to the normal pitch of a note, like a C to a C sharp. So here's our C. If I went from C to a C sharp, that's a small change in the letter C. So that is an accidental. Let's pick A. Okay, and if we went, say, to the next half step down, to the black key just to the left of the A, that would be an A flat. So all these notes, the notes, the black keys on the piano are called accidentals. Let's try another one just for kicks. So here's a G. We could go up a half step, and that would be called a G sharp, since sharp we're moving up. Or here's the G again. Let's go half step down. So if we go here to here, this black key, that is a G flat. All right. So now let's talk about the key signatures that you use to represent these scales. The scales that start on different notes other than C in the C major scale, which is the key of C. So going back to our most basic scale, we had the key of C and a C scale. Okay, so one little tidbit, and this isn't a little tidbit, there's actually 12 possible scales. So there are 12 possible keys to go with each of those scales. Why is there 12? It's because we have 12 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then this C is just starts the repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can pick any one of these notes and do your whole step, half step method and find your scale. So let's pick one that has a lot of flats in it. Let's start on D flat, this note right here. So this is going to be our scale. We're in that key, okay? Okay, so here we go. Starting on D flat, we go up a whole step to the E flat, another whole step to an F. Now we do our half step, which is a G flat. Now a whole step. Remember, it's 2 half steps. A flat, another whole step to B flat, one more whole step. We're getting close. Now, final half step. So did you notice we used all the black keys in that scale, in the D flat scale? There were 5 flats in the key of D flat. Okay, let's try another one just for fun. Let's do a sharp key. So let's try one starting in E. Okay, so let's start on the E and do our method again. So we go whole step, another whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a final half step, which is the octave. Okay, were you counting? Do you know how many sharps? These would all be called sharps in this key. All right, how many did we encounter there? Let's do them again. I'll just play it. All right, answer is 4 sharps. We had an F sharp, a G sharp, a C sharp, and a D sharp in this key. We're in the key of E right now. So here we go again. I'll do it a little quicker. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, so from this point on, if you know that method, the whole step, that method, you can pick any note on the keyboard and play a scale from it. You could play down here. Let's do an A flat scale. So we're in this key. And let's play one just low. Okay, so here's your A flat. You go up a whole step, half step, whole step, and a final half step. So we have an A flat scale. We could even play it up here. You could play it super low. All right, so key signatures actually make reading music a whole lot easier. Instead of possibly having lots and lots of flats or sharps written into the music that adds lots of data on the written page, you can just write an indicator of how many sharps or flats are in that particular song, and you write it in just one spot on each line or stave of the written page, and that informs and reminds you what notes are flatted or sharped as you play the piece. A key signature states that the notes that are indicated in the key signature apply to all the notes in the entire piece of music, unless notified otherwise. There are exceptions, but in general, if you have a piece of music and at the beginning of the written page it has one flat written, and I'll show you an example in a minute, that means that in that entire song, anytime you see that particular note, you flat it. So going backwards a little bit, remember our key of F? That means that anytime you encounter a B on the page, it's actually going to be played as a B flat. All right? And key signatures usually appear at the beginning of a piece, but they can also be used within a piece to signify a change of key. When this key signature in a piece happens, it is called a modulation. It's where you're changing keys in the middle of a song or towards the end of a song. We'll talk more about modulations in future sessions. Okay, let's look at the screen and review a little bit. Here is our G scale once again, and it's configured in our whole step, half step configuration. So here's our G. We're in this key. Okay, and here is right here is our G to start with. Our G, then our A, B, C, D, E, and then our F sharp. That's that one note that you play the black key. So here's that F sharp. This is a sharp indicator that kind of looks like a sideways tic-tac-toe. And then there's our octave. All right? So now continuing on in a little bit of review, here is that F scale. Using the combination of whole steps, here's the F. We're in this key. So here is the F that I'm playing right there. And then we go up a whole step to G, whole step to A, and here is our half step to the B flat. And the flat sign looks like kind of like the letter B, but with a sharp point on the end of it. Okay. Then we keep going up a whole step to C, to D, to E, another whole step, and then finally here's our half step between E and F. Okay, so here's that F scale again. I'll just play it one more time just to review. Okay, continuing our review, this is our G scale again. Right here, starting on the G. We're in that key. Now remember before, in the previous example, in fact, let's pull it up and look at it. Okay, so here it is. Here's our G. G, A, B, C, D, E, and then the F sharp and the G. All right, so let's pull this out of the way. And here is the key signature, the way it works. So instead of writing this F sharp right over here into this area, you write it over here to the left in this near the beginning of the music. You write it once, and then anytime you play an F in this piece, it actually becomes an F sharp. So what's this little squiggly thing right here? Looks like a S with extra fancy squiggles. This is actually a clef, C-L-E-F. This is a clef sign. And this particular clef is called the treble clef. This clef is used for the notes from middle C and above the piano. So if we start here in middle C, you would use that treble clef to write any of the notes all the way up to the very top of the tippy top of the piano. Okay, with the clef and the keys in mind, we just talked about G. Let's go back and look at F. Remember how we worked on that a few minutes back? Here's our F. We're in this key. And we have our F, G, A, and our half step, B flat. That's our black key. Remember that? C, D, E, F. Okay, so the same thing that we did in G, we can do in F. What's this? Instead of having to write all these flat indicators in our music, we can use it. We can add that flat over here next to the treble clef, and that tells us that any B's, see how this is centered on that third line, the same line as any of our B's. So any B that we come across in this song is going to be flatted instead of played naturally. Okay, so here we go. Let's play this one more time. Here we go. F, G, A, B. Okay, I see a B, but instead of playing F, G, A, B natural, I play the B flatted because it says to play that over here. C, D, E, F. So you can imagine how this key signature really simplifies your reading. Let's say you had 10 B's in this next measure of all various octaves and whatever. You would if you had to write this little sign, but beside every one of those, it would just be a nightmare to read. So key signatures really help clean up and make our reading music simpler. They have much more meanings than that also, but as far as music reading, it is really a shortcut to better reading. Now let's talk a bit about the circle of fifths. This is a great tool to use to help you understand the different keys and also help you to remember which notes are flatted or sharped in the 12 different keys that are possible. This is one perfect example of math in music. There is tons of math in music, and this is one of the coolest examples of that, how the formula works. Okay, let's dive in. So you remember earlier in this session we talked about how new keys that are most closely related are an interval of a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth away. So let's look at a perfect fifth away from the first note in the key of G. Remember, we were in this key. In fact, let's start down on this G. Okay? So now let's take that note, the G, and let's move up a fifth from that note and see where we come out. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the fifth note in the key of G is a D. Okay? So the scale in the key of D is the most closely related to the key of G since it's a perfect fifth away from the G. That may sound pretty complicated, but once you start doing this, it really clicks in and you understand it, and it'll really help you remember what keys kind of go in order and how the sharps go in order, go in a sequence. Kind of here again, once again, that mathematical sequence. So since this key is so closely related to G, this provides us a really cool way to keep track of the sharps or flats. Remember that the key of G has one sharp, that F sharp. Now, since the key of D is a perfect fifth away from the G, you just add one more sharp in the key of D. So you go from one sharp to two sharps. So now we're in the key of D. And so let's play a D scale, starting on the 1. Aha, there's another black key in this scale. Real quick, let's do our whole step, half step. So we got whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, which leads us to the C sharp here, and then finally a half step. Okay? So at key of G, we just have one sharp. Key of D, fifth away, we have two sharps. Okay? Now, since we've been working with G and F in this module, let's try that concept in F. Okay, for this one, let's use the interval of a perfect fourth this time. Now, remember, we'll use the perfect fourth as another way to find the most closely related key. And there's a little caveat coming up real quick that'll help you kind of keep those straight. But for right now, let's find our perfect fourth away from the key of F. So here's F. And you notice we're down this time instead of up here. Okay, so let's count up a fourth in this key and see where we land up. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So we just landed on the B flat. That means that a B flat key is the most closely related to our F key. Okay? So let's test that out. Okay? Remember that since this key is so closely related to F, remember that the key of F has one flat in it, and the B flat has two flats in it. Remember the concept of G, how we went from one sharp to the key of G, key of D has two sharps? We're doing the same thing. We're just adding mathematically as we go to the next closest related key. Okay? So since the key of B flat is a perfect fourth away from F, you just add one more flat to the key of B flat. In the key of B flat, you still have the B flat like you had in the key of F, but you add the E flat to this new B flat scale. Once again, you can check your work by our method. Okay, so we're in this key. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 1, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a final half step. So do you see how we used two black keys in that scale? The B flat and the E flat. Remember, here's our E, and you go down, half step, and that becomes a flat because you've gone down. Not gone up, you've come down. So B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and then finally B flat again. Okay, so that's our B flat scale. Okay, so now let's look at this circle of fifths chart. I've used this a long time. I think I first discovered this maybe when I was 12, 13 years old. Didn't really study theory much. Actually, now that I think of it, this was probably the first piece of theory I ever encountered. Yeah, and it's helped me for years and years. So before we look at this, remember how just a few seconds ago I told you had another little caveat coming. Okay, so here it is. This is a pretty important thing. Sharp keys use the perfect fifth up method, and flat keys use the perfect fourth up method. Remember at the beginning of the session we talked how you could use perfect fifths, or perfect fourths. Now here we're kind of delineating which keys fall under which category. So once again, all your sharp keys use the perfect fifth up method to find the next closest key. Okay, now let's look at our circle of fifths again. So at the top, you notice there's a C up there. Okay, notice there's no accidentals in that key signature right here, because there isn't any. Remember, our key of C is just all the white keys on the piano, no flats. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? Now, look at the next one on the right, key of G right here. Here's G, here's the treble clef again, and here's that F sharp that represents the one note in that G scale that will be sharped. Remember that we went up a perfect fifth to find the G, and once we established that G scale, we realized that it had one sharp in it. Notice how the F sharp is written into the key signature. And here it is. See how it's close? Even on this circle, it's the next one to the right. So it's the next closest to the one previous. So we have C, we go up 5. Remember, this side would be up a fifth. All these are sharp keys over here on the right side of the circle. So you go up 5 to the G, and then next we talked about the key of D. See how it is the closest related key to G. So we have G, and then boom, we go up 5 steps to D. All right, see the 2 sharps here in the key signature? Remember how we went from 1 sharp to 2 sharps? So if you keep following that circle around to the right, you can see how the sharp keys continue, the next closest, and then you add an accidental as they continue around the circle. So we didn't play an A yet, but let's just do it, kind of for fun. So we had a D right here, has 2 sharps. And now let's go up to A. So we go 1, 2, in D, we find it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And okay, now we're in our A scale in our key of A. And it's right here on the circle of fifths. Here's our A. Now look, it gives us a little clue here. We're going to have 3 sharps in this key. Once again, look at this. 1, 2, 3. See how each time it goes up a fifth to the next closely related key, it adds a sharp to it. Now let's look at the keyboard and try it. So we're going to start on A. And we go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, now let's do it without saying the steps and just watch which keys are sharped. Okay, same thing down here. Let's start on this A. All right, so we have 3 of them. We have the C sharp, the F sharp, the G sharp. Okay, one more time. Okay, so that has, a key of A has 3 sharps. Let's get a little more complicated. The key of E, which we would find by playing up 5 steps. Remember, it's up a perfect fifth from the previous key. So if we're in A, but we want to see what our next closest related key is, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and boom, now we're in E. Okay, now look at this. This one, we went from 3 sharps in A to 4 sharps in E. Let's try that out. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, here we go. Let's just play that. And watch, it has, on the chart here, on the circle of fifths, it says it has 4 sharps. Let's see if we can spot them. All right, we'll keep going. We're adding sharps as we go. Here's the key of B. And let's take it down so we don't get so high. And look at this one. You had 3 in A, 4 in E, and you have 5 in the key of B. Once again, you use all the black keys in this scale. Okay, and then one last one. Well, technically 2, but you have F sharp, which is 6 sharps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. This one gets a little, there's a complexity to this scale, and we'll talk about it a little later. But in fact, I'll give you a little hint right now. So you start on F sharp and use our technique. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. Now watch this, whole step, you actually play the F, because a whole step from this note would be 2 halves. And then finally the F sharp. And then the last one is C sharp. C sharp isn't used very much because it has 7 sharps in it. Basically, every note is sharp. Writers typically will write, if they want that tonality, they'll write in its, now this is another term I don't think we've used yet, harmonic equivalent. The harmonic equivalent of C sharp is D flat. Has the same pitches, right? And in D flat, you only have 5 flats. So it just becomes an easier piece of music to read in D flat than in C sharp. We'll dive into that a little deeper later on. Now, look at the C at the top again. Remember, no flats, no sharps. Now we're going to go to the left on this circle. And when we go to the left, we go up. Remember, the flat keys go up in fourths instead of fifths. We use fifths around the right side of the circle for sharp keys. Remember, see, all these keys have sharps in them. Now, if we look to the left side of the circle, all these keys have flats in them, all the way around to 7 flats, actually right here. So if we go up a fourth, like we did earlier, to F, we go from C. Now we're in the key of F, and you remember that key had 1 flat in it, the B flat. Now if we keep going, we move to the next available key, to the next closely related, and once again we're only going to add 1 flat each time we move around the circle. So we went from 1 flat now to 2 flats, and we're in the key of the B flat. So we have B flat and E flat in this key. We keep moving around, and up 4, a perfect fourth up from B flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, takes us to E flat. This key right here. So now we're in that helps us find the most closely related. Remember, we went up a fourth over on this side of the scale for flats. All right, so E flat has 3 flats in it. Continuing on, A flat. Here we're going with our same method. 1, 2, 3, 4 flats over here in A flat. Okay, one more, now to D flat. We talked about that a minute ago. It's the harmonic equivalent of C sharp. So D flat has 5 flats. And continuing on, G flat has 6 flats. It's the inharmonic equivalent of F sharp. And F sharp has 6 sharps also. So, but let's think of the flat side of it, because we've been coming to the left, around the left side of the circle. So here's our G flat. There's 6 flats there. And then finally one more, C flat, which is a funny one. All the notes, all the C, D, E, F, G, A, B are all flatted. And you may say, why? Well, when you get into a little more complex literature, there are reasons for doing that, especially if you do a modulation. Remember how we talked about that at the beginning of the session? So sometimes if you do a modulation, you can end up in some of these keys. So C flat. So you take C and you flat it. The D is flatted. E is flatted. The F is flatted, because remember this step is just a half step. The G is flatted. A flat, B flat, and the C is flatted again. So this circle of fifths has a lot of uses. You can use it as a memory tool to memorize the keys and how many flats or sharps are in each key. That's a really valid tool. I think that's what I used it for the first time I ever was shown it and used it. It just helped me keep track of, if I was in the key of D, which notes were sharped. The F sharp and C sharp, I could actually see them right on the circle of fifths. And then another one of the most exciting uses is when we start studying modulations in music, where you're changing keys from one key to another. And this becomes super valuable later on when we do that. It just leads you into some really good, basically mathematical techniques that you can use to change from one key to another. Okay, here's a spot where you can pause the video for a summary of some of the things we've talked about today. So you can read about accidentals, key signatures. So just go ahead and pause the video here for a few seconds, however long you need, and then I'll be right back. All right, that's all for this session. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you have any questions, please email me at smittypricemusic@gmail.com. See you next time.